Brittany, I am so excited to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to chat with you.
I know I asked you, I think months ago, and you were like, no, 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 no. I have nothing to offer. And I remember reading that on my phone, being like, sorry, what? What do you mean by that? And you said, hey, just let me think about it kind of thing. And anyways, then you reached out, you were like, okay, I'm ready. And I'm like, what has happened or changed between now and then that now she all of a sudden wants to be on? So I guess that's why we're
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, I know it's been a couple of months. So lots has changed.
I know. But I think everything we have to talk about today and just kind of your life over the past year, I think you're going to be surprised how much it resonates with everyone. Because I feel like what you went through in the past year, everyone kind of had that roller coaster of emotions, right? And I think it speaks a lot to who you are as a person that you're willing to share. And not many people are willing to talk about kind of what went down in their life in the past year.
Yeah, and I think I was in such a negative place and I really felt alone. And then when I started telling people more about it, like everyone was going through it, but they just didn't know what to do about it. And I think you hear like generic messages about, oh, you having a bad day, like self-care, but that's not helpful because it's almost just like you hear it so much that it doesn't mean anything anymore. And so, yeah, I'm nervous to talk about it, but also just like, I don't know, I kind of feel like it's like the right thing to do almost. So,
Well, it's still raw and vulnerable for you. You know, it's still current, it's still real. It's even though it's happened recently, it's still recent. So, I mean, I'm
yeah.
sure once you start talking about it, you're going to realize that how far along you've come, but also how the stuff that you're dealing with, you still have to deal with every single day.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
When I asked you some of the questions about what you're struggling with currently, what you've overcome, I think I was pretty shocked. Like I saw you April/May, and now you realize like when I was
Yeah.
with you with some of your low points, and I never would have known anything different. And I think
Yeah.
that speaks to how all of us put such a brave face on and kind of we're on autopilot going through our days, but someone might think we're enjoying our life and whatnot, and we could actually be going through some of our lowest lows. Like when I was with you, I was helping you get a beautiful apartment, and a lot of people would be like, wow, Brittany is living her best life. And at the exact same time, you're like, no, this is kind of my lowest low right now.
Yeah. Looking for my own apartment was a huge thing for me. I had gone through a really crappy breakup. I was really upset about it. I really thought that this was my person and that we were going to be together forever. And I was kind of waiting for us to move on with our relationship. And I just kind of like fell apart very quickly. I blame the pandemic for most of it, but like it was just sad. And I was so disappointed. And I just realized like so many things that I wanted to do and things that in my life were just like hinged on other people. And I was like, if I want to move out of my place and if I want to like go and be an adult and do these things, like, why am I waiting for someone else, especially a guy, especially me? Like, I don't care about, like, I think I'm the kind of person that I make my own decisions. I'm not dependent on some dude. But like, I realized in that moment, I was waiting to make like really important decisions based on this person. And I was like, if I want to find my own place, then I'll find my own place. I don't need to wait.
There's so much
Um,
power in that, though, you know?
yeah.
I've been there. I've waited around for a guy to make a life decision before, and I had the same realization of what am I waiting for? If they're not on the same page as me, then why sit around and wait, you know?
Yeah, I was losing momentum. Like I was feeling so stagnant. And then I honestly think like finally deciding to accept that I would be moving out on my own and not with someone was just kind of like the start of that momentum. It was definitely like a low point, but looking back, that was only a few months ago. But looking back, it was a huge part of like where I'm at now.
Well, I think where we live is a huge part of our life and our everyday everything we do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's taking the power back, especially if you were waiting for someone, whether it's a roommate or friend or a relationship to help you decide something, then you're like, I'm gonna do this on my own. It takes the power
Mhm.
back. And like you said, starts the momentum of what else can I do?
Yeah. Especially like in the pandemic, like I just found before, I was never someone who was home very often. I was always going to see what events were around Toronto or going out with friends or whatever. I really wasn't home a lot. But then being home for the pandemic and lockdown and working from home, I just realized how important my home space was. And, I had like crappy furniture. I just didn't like my house. I didn't like where I lived. And so like I've been like really intentional even now since I moved in April. Like I wanted to look and feel like me in this apartment. And I've like really made it a cozy space, which was also like really important when I was going through a rough time. I just needed coziness.
I think it comes from a control aspect where it's if I can control my surroundings, at least in my own home, then I can kind of deal with kind of everything else happening outside of myself. But
Yeah.
if you also don't like where you're living and sitting for 10, 12, 14 hours a day, it's like everything feels like it's so out of your control.
Yeah. And I think sharing a space with someone throughout the pandemic in general is just, it's difficult, especially if you're both going through stuff and you kind of feel like you have to hide in your room and you're just like dealing with stuff. And I don't know, when I moved out on my own, I felt like it was a breath of fresh air. I was finally starting to process stuff, but then finally being able to process stuff like brought on more things. And then it started kind of creeping into other areas of my life. And it was the start of a good process, but it was kind of like a bit of a dip and then a bit of a, I don't know, an equalizing moment
It's
almost.
opening the
But
floodgates.
yeah, I just had room to think. And I remember talking to a friend about it and saying, like, I'm so happy to be like on my own and have my own space. But I just feel so sad. And they're like, I think that's like normal. Like when you go on a trip or something, and sometimes you feel just like a lot of emotions, like your first, 1 or 2 days, because you have time to think. You're not just like on the clock and like working on the next project and have, people messaging you all the time or whatever. But it kind of felt like that being in here too. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I get that. Now, I want to ask you one thing I was shocked to learn from you is you recently took 2 months off of work. Someone hearing that just flippantly would be like, wow, you had took a 2 month vacation. But I know it's
Yeah.
not like that at all. So,
No.
the first question I want to ask you is what sparked you for taking that break? And how did you know starting in May that things were really spiraling?
So I moved in April. So April and May was like my processing time and where I could really like could cry on the couch and no one would know. And like earlier this year, my grandma passed away, which was really sad. And I think not being able to see her throughout the pandemic, just thinking about not being able to have conversations that I wanted to with her. And we were really close when I was growing up. We had a lot of similarities. And it took me a long time to process that. When I first heard the news, my immediate concern was about my own mom and thinking about what it would be like to lose mom and just hearing my mom cry and how sad she was. That was kind of like the first thing on my mind. I didn't even really realize almost that my grandma was gone because I hadn't seen her in person in so long. All of our messages were all like Facebook Messenger, like, here's a recipe you should try or whatever. And I was really fortunate. Like, my workplace gave me a few days off, but it wasn't at the time that I needed the time off to deal with that. And then I had this like awful breakup, and I was kind of realizing like a few friendships that weren't really serving me anymore. And it came to a point around my birthday, which is like just the worst. I was like, I'm turning 29 and I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm questioning all of these different things. And a friend of mine was going through something really, really hard, which kind of triggered something within me. And I just had like, honestly, it was like a catatonic again. I couldn't even tell you like what happened. I was very fortunate. The friend came over and was just taking care of me and making sure that I was okay. And they messaged my workplace for me and they're like, I think Brittany needs to just take a break for a couple days. And my work was just super helpful, very supportive. And then when I went back, someone on our HR team took me aside and they're like, you have a lot of options. If this isn't the amount of time that you need, like you can take a longer break. And then she kind of took me through like my health benefits. And so I ended up taking short-term disability for 2 months. And so part of that was like, I would have to check in with the case manager and let them know what I was doing to kind of like make sure that I'm progressing, getting better. And so it was like going to therapy. I was using benefits that I'd kind of like left to the side, getting massages and just trying to actually do like proper self care and let work go. And the first like 2 weeks was really hard. Like I kept working anyways.
Of course.
Doing projects.
Why am I not
Stupid.
surprised?
And it's 2 months. Like what doing a week's worth of work and then taking a 2 month break, it really doesn't matter. Like I really should have just logged off. And I was also like, I felt so much shame. I felt so much guilt about taking a time off and what it means to go on short-term disability. Like even just being able, like, I think this is actually the first time that I've said like short-term disability to someone else. That's what it was. And I was able to get like a partial paycheck while I was taking time off to take care of myself. It really wasn't a vacation. Like I was just dealing
You
with
were
my
probably working
stuff.
harder during the time.
Yeah, it was like almost like moving in part two. Like I moved in, but I was still working remotely while I moved here. And then work got taken away. And I was like really alone with my thoughts and thinking about everything that was going on in my family, everything that's going on with friends, relationships. And then it questioning my career. Like I'm thinking of like really big questions like, am I happy right now? Like, am I living in the right city? Is this where I wanted to be? And I started to feel like all of these things were happening to me and that I didn't have a lot of say in what was going on because I had built up like all these expectations and none of these things had worked out for me. And it took some time to realize I actually did do a lot of things intentionally and like I did do things for myself to take care of myself and like come to a place where I was feeling grateful and thankful as opposed to just like, I don't know, like a victim almost. Like I just
It's
it
a
was like
fine
and that's
line.
only it's a fine line, and it was, like, such a like, when I think about the timeline, this is literally, like, May to September, like, it's really not that long to go through that stuff, like, when I think about those 2 months, it felt like a long period of time, but now that I'm back at work, I'm like, it felt like such a short period of time, but it was just so worth it, like, I'm so glad that I did it, and I've encouraged other people, but again, it's like that short-term disability label, like, people are like, "Oh, but I don't have a disability," or I don't know, whatever stigmas you might have with that word. But like, if you can't do your day normally, like that's you are experiencing some type of disability or obstacle that's preventing you from just like being happy yourself.
I have so many questions. The first thing I'll say to what you're saying about stigma, I think even 2 years ago, the word therapy, there was a stigma around it. And now we use that word being like, "Oh, wait, you're not in therapy? What do you mean?" But now
Yeah.
something like a word or a phrase like short-term disability, if more people are talking about it and talking about that they need that, that there's options to take that, I think that term will become more mainstream and not as, like, scary with such stigma behind it. And I think the fact that your HR person took you aside even after just a few days off and showed you options, hats off to that HR person.
Yeah.
Like, that's essentially their job, and they noticed that you were going through something and taking that opportunity to show you, "Hey, you have options, like, you don't have to come back to work this Monday." And
Mhm.
knowing that you have all those options because as employees in Canada, we pay into those benefits all the time, but yet we never take any of them.
Yeah. 100%. If they hadn't taken me aside, I don't think I would have done it. And
You wouldn't have searched for it. Absolutely not.
I wouldn't even have realized that that benefit applied to me. Like I would have just been using personal days and vacation days to try and make up this time. And beyond that, like I was feeling so guilty because I could tell my work was suffering. I was like not proud of the stuff that I was working on. I felt frustrated with the amount that I was getting done in a single day. And I would avoid answering emails or Slack messages or whatever because I was just like in this, I don't know, like a pit of despair is like how I would
And then it
describe it. Like,
dominoes because if you're not proud of the
yeah,
work you're doing, then you're not responding to things, then it dominoes and it gets
yeah.
worse and worse and worse and worse. And then if she didn't take you aside to show you those options of what you could do to go take care of yourself, it would have got worse and worse and worse and then became a company liability.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't think I like this is the most supportive workplace I've ever worked in. When I think about like previous employers, I know that I'm like incredibly fortunate. But it's funny because I'm that much more loyal to this company. Like, even while I was on my break, I'm getting, messages from recruiters and whatever, because apparently like marketers are in high demand right now. And I'm just like, no, like I'm happy where I'm at. I don't care. Like that type of relationship in a workplace is so much more valuable than a couple more dollars to your salary or whatever.
You can't put a price to that.
You can't. No, you don't get a 2-month break. It's such an
Ever.
opportunity. It's not a thing that happens as an adult. And so the fact that I was even like supported and encouraged, they actually asked me if I wanted to take 3 months. And I was like, no, 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 I can't.
You're eager to get
But
back.
yeah, I'm like, okay, like I think I've had my time. Like I feel ready to take on projects and be like actively working on things like outside of myself. But yeah, I was very lucky.
I want to ask you how you felt with your friend reaching out to your workplace and asking for time off. I personally would have felt like, whoa, you're really overstepping a boundary here. But how did you feel about that?
I was with her while it was happening for about 2 or 3 days. I was like pretty dissociated. Like my hands were feeling kind of like tingly and I don't even think that when I was talking, I was really making a lot of sense because I just felt broken. I felt like any defense mechanism, coping strategy, all those things just like suddenly kind of broke down. And I was like super, super raw. And she's like, I'm going to message your boss. Is it okay if I open your phone? I gave her my phone and she messaged my boss on Slack and said, hi, this is Brittany's friend. I think it's important that you know this. And I wouldn't reach out if it wasn't important. And also, again, like really lucky that my boss was just like immediately understanding. I think this was all on a Saturday and my boss immediately responded on a Saturday too. Just very grateful for that support now. And I'm close to my best friend. Like, even if I hadn't known what she was doing, I trust my life with her. So,
What a great friend, though, to recognize
yeah.
that this is bad and how bad it is. And knowing that you going back to work even a few days later was not the move.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the last few months too, like reevaluating like some friendships. Like with her, the trust is so deep and our relationship is just, it's the best. I'm so appreciative of her. And we've become like so much closer throughout the pandemic. We always have really good conversations and support each other so much that, again, like going through a really rough time, like having someone like that in your corner is so critical. She sent me a photo yesterday of what we were doing a year ago because she wasn't in a great place either. And we were doing tarot readings in the park. And we were both like, what's going to happen to us? It's a pandemic. The world's on fire. What are we going to do? And we were eating cinnamon buns, eating our feelings. And we gave each other very accurate tarot readings. Like it was
When you
basically like,
reflect back like that upcoming
yeah,
year.
it's so crazy.
I read
Like
your post. Which card did you get?
she got an Ace of Wands, which is basically like, if you're waiting to take a creative risk, do it. And so for her, she's in theater, she's a writer, and she's now working, coordinating mental health programs for the arts with people who are struggling with mental health. So she's doing like totally her thing now, which is awesome. And for me, it was like you're going through a really dark period. You've had this like toxic relationship and you need to just like go on your own and be this independent person that you are and like reconnect with that. And then it was basically about like building momentum. And then as you kind of like put out that positive energy, like positive things will start coming back to you.
It's
And
hard
that's
to
like,
believe that unless it starts happening to you.
I know. And the thing is, it really is like an energy attraction thing, which just sounds like so woo woo. But when
It's
you're in a good
true.
mood, you can have two different perceptions. Like you can have the same thing happen to you on a good day or the same thing happen to you on a bad day. And that experience will just be totally different in either of those scenarios. And even just thinking about like going back to work or supporting another friend, like any of those things, like if you're in a positive mindset versus negative mindset, it changes the conversation totally.
Mhm. Now, you did mention you had a lot of anxiety thinking about going back to work. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah. So I had a gradual return to work. I started the first week, I did 3 days. Then the next 2 weeks, I did 4 days. And people kind of just left me alone. I feel like there were a lot of people like didn't know why I was gone. So coming back, I don't think people knew what to ask me to do or not. So I could kind of like fly under the radar, which on one side was like nice. On the other side was just kind of like more anxiety
Well, you
making.
probably felt like people had kid gloves on with you.
Yes. Yes, exactly. And I did the first week back, I did have one pretty bad panic attack. My boss had scheduled a meeting with me, like no context. And I was like, God, like I'm gonna get fired. Like I like took this time off that I didn't deserve and blah, blah, blah. And it was just a lovely meeting. She was just checking in on
Checking
me.
in, yeah.
Everything was fine. Classic millennial anxiety about meetings with your
Meetings.
boss.
Yes. I think I'm getting fired with every meeting. That's why I don't
I
have a
know.
boss anymore. I love it.
Like put an agenda in the invite. That's all you have to do. But yeah, so we had a meeting and like it was just a reminder that half of the bad things that happen are like in my head. Like she's never given me any reason to think that things are going wrong or negative. Like I'm creating that dynamic in my head. She's been so lovely. And so I keep trying to, whenever I have a moment like that where I'm being like super anxious or I think like something's going to go wrong, I just try and write down or do like a voice recording or something that says, you thought this was going to happen, but it actually went this way. And now I don't even really need to write it down. It's just,
We spin stories in our head so much. And
yeah.
sometimes I like the fact that you do voice recordings because then if you listen back to it, you're like, why did I think that was
Yeah.
going to happen?
Yeah. I actually, so when I started my 2 month break, I was smoking a lot of weed, which is not really my thing, but I honestly like, it was an escape, whatever. And I didn't realize I was doing this, but I bought a hammock. I would go outside for bed, have a joint, and then go to bed. And it was my bliss for the day that I could just kind of like not be super conscious of all the thoughts that's going on in my head. And what I didn't know I was doing was I was taking voice recordings during these little sessions outside. And so for 3 months, I had these voice recordings on my phone that I didn't know were there.
How
And
stoned are you right now?
I I never smoke weed. So honestly, it's like probably like half a
The
joint. Like it was
hammock
stupid.
adds
But
another level as well.
yes, yeah, just staring at the skyline, having a joint. And then one day, like I get a message or a notification on my phone that says you're running out of storage space. And I find these voice recordings and I looked into them and it was crazy because I went from where I was the beginning of this year and the recordings went all the way up until end of July. And
It's like a
so
vocal
it was
diary.
it was so weird because there's decisions that I was questioning if I made the right choice or not. And it's kind of like that battle between like your head and your heart. Like this is the logical choice, but I feel like this one's better. And then hearing me just feel like so stoned and just like speaking truthfully, like to myself, essentially, there was some like really reaffirming things in there. And I don't know, it helped me relax and realize it's, how they say like drunk words or sober thoughts or whatever
Yes.
like that. So it was kind of like that. And I was just like, I trust myself. I trust my instincts. Like this was true for me 2 months ago. And now that I'm like questioning it, I know like where my head was at then. And so it's just kind of like this like weird time capsule through this whole journey of 2021.
There's such a beautiful poetic vibe to that though, you know?
Yeah, it's funny because I have a disposable camera that I'm going to get developed this week. And there's photos from the same period. So from like January
Wow.
to August that I'm going to get developed. And it's going to have some people that are no longer in my life on it. And
That
there's going to
happens.
be new people. And it's just going to, like, I feel like getting those pictures back. Like, I don't even know what's on it, but it's
It's
going to
gonna be a
be a
memory
journey.
lane.
Yeah. Yeah. All these time capsules. Um,
There's something a little bit more therapeutic about voice recordings as opposed to writing it down. And I think like,
yeah.
that's how I feel. Like I feel more cathartic after I bitch to a girlfriend as opposed to me writing in a journal.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so I
no,
think voice
I was
recordings
trying to
help
journal, but I was getting frustrated because I couldn't get all of my thoughts down
fast enough.
as fast as I wanted. And so
Yeah.
I switched to doing voice recordings. And sometimes towards the beginning of the year, going to a new coffee shop every day. And so that was kind of like my get out of the house, self care. And sometimes when I was on those walks to go to the coffee shop, I would do a voice recording of, okay, this is going on because it was really my only time to be alone because I was living with a roommate at the time. But now in tons of time capsules and journals
Mhm.
and voice recordings and whatever. So
I feel like you can
lots of
take
things to
all of
revisit
that,
if I ever
especially
need
with
to.
the photos that you're going to develop and like make some kind of memorabilia.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's gonna be like V1, V2 Brittany, basically. The last like year has just been more transformative than like any other year of my life. And I'm so excited to get the photos. And then I want to do like something with it. I don't know what, but I don't know, it's like a mixed media
Yeah.
album or something like that, you know?
It's also a lot to do, obviously, pandemic time and just kind of having no control over everything, but it's also to do with you going through your Saturn return, that age from like 28 to 30. That's when a
Mhm.
lot of things change, but also you question, you take inventory of everything. So I'm not surprised that you went through some changing of friendships, like questioning everything about, am I happy? Is this what I want? Blah, blah, blah. Like
Yeah.
it's pretty normal, especially at this age.
Yeah. I've become really obsessed with the pattern app to use it.
Yeah, it's creepy as fuck.
It's so freaky. Like
You ever go back in time and like look, being like, I remember that's like main point in my life, and it's like it told me it was happening.
yes, yes. Oh my gosh, there's one thing that it's so eerie to me. So my partner now, he was going through kind of like when we started dating, I thought it was like totally casual. I'm like, this is not going to be a thing. I don't care. Like I'm newly single, whatever. And then,
You described it as pretty
yeah,
casual when I was seeing you last too.
when I met you, yeah, like I really did not expect anything to come out of it at all. And he's so different than like anyone that I've ever dated. But now I'm like so obsessed with him. Like we're the best relationship that I've ever been in. Like we talk through things. He's like emotionally intelligent. It's just so nice. And in the pattern app, it was like August 26th, something really important is going to happen in your romantic life. And like, we just had like it felt like a really important conversation on that day. And we just kind of like really realized that like we're super aligned. And it's such a classic pandemic cliche that like everyone I know that's gotten into a relationship, they're like so serious so fast. When I was looking at the pattern, I was just like, there's no way that this could be real. Who cares? Like, it's not a thing. And then on the date that the pattern said this happened, and I don't know, maybe I'm conflating it, but
No,
I'm fine with that.
it's not. Any other person would definitely tell us we're conflating it, but I've had similar situations with the pattern app where it was the day something happened.
I was looking at it this morning. I was like, this is so weird. He and I score, I can't believe this is even a thing. For our relationship match in the pattern, we're rare and exceptional on like every single thing.
I love that.
And then I went back because I didn't realize that you could have like previous partners and stuff like that. And like what it was saying about previous partners was super accurate. Better as friends, not as a couple, or like you were super spontaneous, but you know, you have to give time kind of thing.
But you have to know like their birth time and everything too, right?
Oh, I'm so into astrology. I know all of those things.
I know, but should I like reach out to past people and be like, remind me when you're born?
Like from an anonymous number. So this is the
I
government
need
of
to know.
Ontario.
No, I love the pattern. I remember when I first downloaded it, I was going through a bit of a tough time. This is a couple of years ago, and I was questioning a lot of things. And then the pattern was basically telling me that things were not going to work out. I just deleted it. And I was like, I don't
Yeah.
want to believe you. But obviously, when I look back at the same period, it was just a period of almost like turmoil and questioning things. But it was right. But during the time it was actually happening, I was like, I don't need to know the end here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that app freaks me out. I love that it's accurate, but I also hate it.
Oh my God, my God. I want to backtrack a little bit. You said earlier that you often are an open book, or you thought you were an open book, but then when you're struggling, you tend to isolate yourself. I
Mhm.
personally resonate with that a lot. I'm very charismatic and extroverted, as you know, but I feel like you, where I don't feel like anyone really knows who I am, though. So I don't actually open up as much as I think so. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, I think I kind of like surprised myself like that weekend of my birthday where I really broke down and my friend was just like taking care of me. She's like literally like feeding me, visiting me, making sure that I had everything that I needed. And she's just like, I didn't know that it could get this bad for you. And I feel like really guilty that I didn't know that. And this is a side of you that I haven't seen before. And I remember thinking like, maybe I haven't been as like outward because I really felt like I had no filter during that time period. But like they know that I have like down periods and that I've had things happen throughout my life that upset me or that have brought me down. And we've been pretty honest with each other. There's nothing that they don't know about me. It's just that I realized that they didn't know how I process these things or that they don't know like the depth of meaning that some of these things have to me. And I remember thinking like, I don't know, it was like almost like this moment of clarity. Like, how does my best friend who is taking such good care of me right now not know that I could reach this like level? I always thought that I was like pretty vulnerable with her and I'm known for being like pretty candid. I am a very passionate person. I care a lot about a lot of things, but it also made me realize that I tend to care about others and talk to them about what's going on with them. And I might like relate stuff that's going on with me to them, but I'm never necessarily like processing with somebody. Like I usually take that on my own. Maybe I'll talk to one of my sisters about it or maybe my partner, but usually I'm in my own head about that stuff. And I never like truly no filter, I don't know, discussing that stuff with anyone. And I really realized it too, because like I said, it was like a very like physical feeling when I realized like I have zero defense mechanisms up. And I felt like I could so easily be taken advantage of in that moment. And I felt so raw. And it was just the worst type of feeling of like freedom almost. Like I felt so open, but like I don't know, like cracked open. Like it was just such a bad place. And yeah, it was realizing that my friend was seeing me like that for the first time and like seeing a new side of me for the first time. And I mean, since then, I've been a lot more vulnerable with that and been more honest about how I'm dealing with something. So, like, sometimes I'll get like really obsessive over one like particular issue. And that's something that I usually keep to myself because it's embarrassing to be obsessive about a problem. And I'll tell my friend about it. And then they'll tell me, yeah, like I'm like that too. Like, here's what I
Mm,
do instead. And even my partner now, like I told him about something that was just like stuck on repeat in my head. And he's helping me like figure out like where I can put that energy instead. And I think it's something that will never like 100% go away because I feel like I'm hyper aware of the people that I'm with, what's going on in their lives, and like where my stuff fits into that. And so, like, some of the times I won't say what's going on, but I mean, I have regular therapy now, which has been super helpful. And so I kind of like test the waters in therapy, be open there. That's what this woman is paid to do.
literally.
And then once I have that kind of practice, try and like almost exercise my support network. Because one thing that I really came out of this with is the people who really care about me, who I really can be honest with about what's going on. Like my best friend and my sisters were super supportive as well during this time. And I think especially with sisters, like I'm the oldest sister. So for me,
To lean on a younger
being
sister, that's goes against everything.
yeah, especially like I think with the problems that they're facing, and I feel like I've gone through it. I can impart this like age old wisdom and whatever, but I need them too. And so we have Zoom calls like pretty regularly now. And I look forward to them. And it's taking away that feeling of a matriarchal figure or
Of course.
something to them. Like it made the relationship so much better because it's just timing. There's really not that much difference between them. But anyways, that's a whole other thing.
Do you feel like it was an issue of your friends not asking if anything's going on? Or do you feel like it's more coming internally where you don't think your problems are as big as theirs, or you think you have it handled?
I think it's all of those things because I wasn't vulnerable with people. People didn't know how bad it could get for me. And so they didn't think to ask because they assumed that I had it handled. And I wanted to handle it. So I tried to the point where I like burned out from trying. I wish that I had paid closer attention to the friendships that like I could share more stuff with and like just tried to do that stuff sooner because it almost feels like I'm too old to do this now. But then at the same time, it's the time when some of this, like the superficial stuff kind of starts fading away. I know that I've been referred to as like the strong friend or the friend that people go to when they're like in crisis. And I will always be there for my friends. That's always a priority for me. But then you have to think, is this something that my friends would do for me too? And are they capable of doing that for me? Like, are they on my level? And that's been a huge thing for me this year.
For the friendships that kind of didn't make it past the pandemic for you, what was the main overall reasons of why those friendships are no longer?
I think it's just vulnerability. It's do I feel like I'm hiding stuff from them? Does it feel like they're hiding stuff for me? Like how shallow or deep is the relationship? I remember after one of my video chats with my sisters, one of my sister's boyfriends texted me and he said, like, I love like that you guys talk. Like every time Jess is done one of your video calls, she's glowing. Like she's just lifted up. And I want to feel like that when I'm done hanging out with a friend. And if I don't feel that way, like, and it's not really adding anything to my life, it's just not worth the time. And I also feel, I mean, like with the pandemic, you have to really be like choiceful about who your friends are and who you're spending time with. And so I want to spend time with people that are making the pandemic less shitty for me.
Yeah, I feel that.
And I
I
think
went through a lot of
it just
friendship
became
breakups,
easy.
so I get it.
Yeah. It just got to the point where I was just like, don't have energy for this. And I don't have to have energy for this. I don't feel bad about it. And if this person notices the absence of our friendship, maybe they'll want to improve it somehow. And if they don't, it will just fade away. And so either of those outcomes are cool with me. But yeah, and I feel like I've like ended out less friends, but like much higher quality friendships.
Yeah. I noticed a few of my friendships were almost convenient friendships where we would hang out as a group, but then when I realized like I don't actually have an individual relationship with them at all. And once the
Yeah.
pandemic happened, and I know we're talking a lot about the pandemic, but still it's kind of our life these
It's
days.
life. Yeah.
And I noticed I'm like, I don't feel inclined to reach out to them to ask them to hang out one on one. Am I really friends with them?
No, I feel that.
I know I've seen you make posts about therapy, but what was the steps on how to find a therapist? I've never been to therapy. Let me just say that. And I
True.
know it's actually crazy. I'm like, I feel like the odd one out. And I think for me, I got serious trust issues. So telling someone I
Yeah.
literally don't know, like the deepest, darkest parts of me, no, thank you. No,
We
thank
need
you.
like a okay, so I'll try and give you like the short version.
Yeah. Did you interview a
When
lot of people? That's what people say, like kind of
I
talk to a
did,
bunch of people. Okay. But that costs
I
so much
did.
money, no?
It does, but
Yeah.
I do feel like when you find the right fit, it's worth it. And I mean, hopefully you have some benefits that will help like cover that cost.
Nah, girl, I'm
Um,
self-employed.
but I will say, so therapy is like such a like major theme. I can't even believe we're just talking about it now. But so I started therapy when I was in university, just because dealing with your typical stress of assignments and whatever else. And I had some like hits and misses. I had one like really bad experience. And then I was just like, you know what? This isn't for me anymore. And I stopped. And then a year before the pandemic, I was let go from my job, which was a huge hit to my ego. And I was like, I think mental health is part of the reason why I was let go. Like, I think it was affecting me at work, but I didn't really know how to like name it or whatever. And so I started looking for a therapist. I think I spoke with maybe two or three therapists. So I took a break for a little bit and then I found this website for a session who I was just so excited about the idea because it just made so much sense. I actually reached out to the founder and was like, can I work with you? Like, how do I support your goal here? Because I just think like all of the issues that I have with therapy, like you solve it. If I still work with them today, it was actually writing a blog about burnout for them that I realized, oh, this is what's happening to me right now. So
I love
I
how
feel
you're
like,
doing research. You're like, I could just write about myself.
yeah, basically. So, what First Session does is you can go to their website. They have a marketplace of a whole bunch of Canadian therapists with their specializations, how long they've been practicing, all of that. And you can watch videos to get an idea of like how they talk with their clients. And then they also set up, you can do a 15-minute free phone consultation so that you can talk to the person, get like an idea, tell them what your goals are. I have had calls, like these like consultation calls where someone said, you know what? I actually don't think that you and I would be a fit, which I appreciate because I knew what kind of therapy I wanted. I wasn't super into CBT focused therapy. I wanted something that was a little bit more like less short term goal oriented. And so I kept my search going. And then I found my current therapist on firstsession.com. And I love her. Like it's a really great match. I relate to her, but I don't like um, I still trust what she says. She says
Mhm.
things that I think are smart. I once had a call with a therapist. I was like, how did you graduate university? How is it possible?
That's how I would think as I was interviewing people too. I'd be like,
Yeah.
I don't think you know more than me. And that's an
Yeah.
issue that I probably need to deal with.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, when it comes to your therapist, like, you should be as picky and choosy. Like, if you want someone who's the same race, same religion, same sexual orientation, like, you can be judgy as you want
Mhm.
because you want someone that you can, like, truly, truly relate to. And I think that's, like, a huge part of it. It was funny because, like, part of this 2-month thing, so I had been seeing her since November, and I'd actually, like, most of our appointments were me trying to process this weird relationship with the guy that I was seeing at the time and then processing the breakup. And there was one point I was like, I've spent so much money on this man. Like, I want to send him an invoice for all these therapy sessions. And it's like, and then I told her one day, I was like, I want to move on with my life. I need to focus on other things. I am not this person who like is so caught up in a single dude. Like, this is stupid. And she's like, okay. And then she held me accountable and we did some visualization exercises that I at first thought were a little bit like not for me, but have been super helpful. She's helping with some career stuff now, and it's very helpful. And like I said, for those moments where I'm not sure if I want to talk about it with like my partner or my friends yet, I can kind of like talk about it with her, almost know what I'm saying. Cause sometimes, like I said, I can be very candid. Sometimes I say things and I don't even know what it means until later. And so I can talk through it with her and then I know what I'm feeling. And so then when I want to talk about it with somebody else, I can go to them and be like, listen, like here's the deal. And tell them like I'm talking about it in therapy, like I'm taking care of it, but it's what's going on with me. And so it's been huge.
How often do you go? Is it a weekly thing? Bi-weekly?
I usually go every 2 weeks. And then depending, like if I feel like I don't need it, I cancel it. If I need an extra session, I'll just book an extra session. She's very good at responding to emails. Not all therapists are. While I was taking the 2 months off, I saw her every week for the first month and then every other week for the second month.
Right. Right. Okay, I'll check it out. There's been times in my life where I'm like, "Oh my god, I really need this." And I will give myself credit that I am good at, like, self-soothing and kind of, like, talking through my own problems, like, and processing myself, but I could
Mhm.
always use another opinion, I'm sure.
Yeah. What I really wanted was someone to challenge me because I feel the same as you. Like
Mhm.
it's just like when you're so used to being like self-reliant, like, used to doing stuff for yourself. I feel like those are the people who like, they're like, oh, I don't need that. I already do this for myself. You've always been the one to hold yourself accountable. And sometimes it's difficult to call yourself out on your bullshit. And so I really appreciate sometimes she's like, do you think that maybe you're doing this because of this? I'll be like, oh,
You're like,
didn't think
"Right."
of that. Maybe. Yeah.
'Cause and then sometimes and I look at my past, I might have relied on, like, my romantic partnerships to kind of deal with that and kind of
Yeah.
rant to them, and that's not healthy either, and that's not fair to kind of unload on them.
Yeah. And I think like one of the biggest things that came out of therapy for me is sometimes like you think you're doing the right thing, but it's because you were taught to do things like the wrong way as a kid. Like, you have a chaotic childhood or like a parent that you can't necessarily trust to be reliable. When you grow up, you don't trust when someone's actually treating you really well and it feels uncomfortable and you can't accept it. And so, like, dealing with stuff like that is hard. That's not I don't think like if
You
you
have to
can
unravel so much.
yeah, there's so much to unravel and you can get lost in it. And having someone that's like keeping track, taking the notes, knows psychology and how these things work and has also talked with other people and seen how it's working for other people has been like super valuable. And for relationships with, like my family, my friends, my romantic partner, like it's been so helpful. I feel like all of the relationships that I have right now are just like serving me like so much better now. They're on purpose. I feel like if something's wrong, like we talk about it, we have proper apologies. I really don't have any like superficial relationships anymore.
That's a really good feeling.
Very good feeling.
The last topic I want to dive into, if you want to, is I wanna
Mhm.
talk about you getting let go from a job. And I say this
Uh,
because I've also been let go of a job pre-pandemic, like, right before the pandemic hit, and like you said, it was, holy, a blow to the ego. Like, I've
yeah.
I've never and this is rude of me to say, but, like, I didn't think I was one of those people.
Yeah.
I'm
No, I
sure you
think
felt the
that's
same.
100%. I was also like, I was coming off of a high. I'd come from this like super successful company. I rose in the ranks so quickly. I was able to negotiate a really good salary. Like I felt on top of my game. I was getting a lot of messages from recruiters, and I got fired on the last day of my probation. So 3 months in. And I will say, I think that like my case is like kind of special. Maybe it's not. Maybe I want to believe that it's
Mhm.
special, but I was working with some pretty intense founders. And I'm the kind of person that will call that out. Not always well received in the startup environment, especially male founded companies. But I was having a weekend with my family. I was getting emails and calls from one of the founders. And I said, this is actually really inappropriate. This project is done and approved, and I shouldn't be hearing from you right now. And then he had the audacity to tell me that I ruined his weekend. And I was like, dude, like we talked about this earlier this week. You said it was good to go. And it all came down to one emoji that he did not like that I used. And honestly, like I think at the end
And
of
it's
the
not the eggplant emoji,
day,
let's just clear
no,
that.
not the eggplant emoji. It was like a totally workplace safe emoji. It was actually like the disco man. And so now that's
Which
my
is so
favorite.
fun.
I know. I sometimes when I don't even believe that this happened, I'm so glad that I still have the screenshots to prove that this is like a real thing that happened to me. But yeah, so that happened. And then the next week I was let go. And I was so frustrated because I had given so much emotion to this company. I really believed in what they were trying to do. It was all about supporting small businesses. And I had all of these really big ideas. And when I started, they were ready to support me on them. And things that like probably not a lot of startups would be open to. And as I went along, it was just like a lot of nitpicking over details that, like, in my opinion, were pretty inconsequential. And again, I'm a pretty kind of person. And I would say, I really don't think this is worth our time, or I think we should move on, or let's just like scrap this and do the thing that you want if it's really going to be that big of a deal. And it got to the point where I just felt so awful at work all the time. I didn't even realize until after I was let go how awful I was feeling. And I remember one time a friend met me for coffee and they were just like, you look terrible. What is wrong with you? And I didn't even realize. I looked in the mirror. My hair was just like, I had it in this messy bun. I think I was wearing like the shirt that I slept in probably. I looked haggard. Like I was not in a good place. And I just remember thinking like, I need to get out of this, but I'm so drained by this job already 3 months in. That's already like a red flag right there. Like I really should have just quit myself, but I feel like this is also like maybe a millennial mentality. Like I just wanted to prove myself and I just wanted to see this thing that I cared about come to life and make a contribution to a company that I really believed in. And it was just like such a struggle. And when they fired me, I remember thinking like it was so abrupt. I had no idea that that's what was going to happen. Like nobody warned me. No one said, hey, if you don't start doing this, we're going to let you go. It was just, hey, you're done. Like pack up your stuff and go. And they were not nice about it either. And I was just my eyes out, leaving this like incubator space. And I just remember going home and thinking, what do I do? And I opened my laptop, like, am I going to watch Netflix? And I couldn't collect EI because they let me go during my probation period.
Last day. Holy shit.
It was so like the least they could have done. It doesn't even, I don't know what it's like on the business. I don't know if they have to pay any fee or something that would disincentivize them, but they just like really screwed me over. And I was lucky that I had saved a lot of money. So I was in a place where I could still pay rent. And if I really needed to, I have a support network that I could probably rely on to help get through a few months. But yeah, that was like huge, huge hit to my ego. I was questioning my career. I didn't know. I felt stupid. I felt not strong enough. And I remember I wanted to talk to a career coach because I just felt like so lost. And I was interviewing a few career coaches and I spoke with this one woman who she had been part of Vitamin Water before it was like a thing. And she had helped grow this company and we had so much in common. And then I left and, you leave this place where you're used to, like, everything, you're used to the way that people work and you're super comfortable. And then you have to go and readjust. And sometimes that readjustment is hard, but also like sometimes like you could be so good at your job, but it's just not the right environment for you to thrive and not the right environment for you to work. And slowly I started to accept that. I also had already booked a trip to Japan with my friend. So I went on that trip not worrying about work, which was in hindsight really lovely. If I had had that job while I was on that trip, I would not have enjoyed it at all. And I was also really lucky that I was freelancing on the side. And one of my freelance clients ended up wanting to hire me full time. And so I found a job like within a few months. And I definitely learned some key resilience skills and also just like what the difference is between like having a job, doing a good job, but then also like being able to leave that job and like sleep at night and take care of yourself. Like it was such a terrible experience. And it's funny, like sometimes I have other friends who were let go from this company because they're just like brutal. There's like a group of us who've all been let go from the startup.
There's a pattern there.
It's a pattern. And that's why like I don't blame myself or my skill set. I think that I wasn't like the right fit for this environment. And I think most people who get let go, it's the same case. It really doesn't say anything about like how smart you are, how good you are at your job. It's just, are you around the right people that you can do the best you can at work? But it's funny, like sometimes one of these people who've also been let go will send me like a Glassdoor review and it's like more of the same. And I hope in
Glassdoor
my heart of
reviews don't
hearts
lie.
that like they don't lie. And I hope that those things like affect companies, especially like an environment like that, where it's a very clear pattern. I hope karma comes around. But at the end of the day, like I am now in an even better job on multiple levels. I don't feel stressed about having this conversation with you right now. And I just feel supported also to try new things, be creative, but I can also like, shut off my laptop, log off Slack when I want to. So it was really hurtful at the time. And it really triggered a lot of anxiety in me as well related to work. Like when I get
Imposter
that.
syndrome and just like
Yeah.
questioning your skill sets. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's ego. Like that's really the name of the game.
100%. I feel like that ego part, it really kind of makes you realize like what you need to kind of like put aside to be able to work in a workplace. Like I think it did also make me realize my job before. I was like very emotionally invested. I had a lot of friends, my workplace, and like I was like so involved And that's not necessarily like the most like healthy relationship with your workplace. And like trying to recreate that in another workplace didn't work for me. And so like now in my current job, I have some work friends. I also like log off. I'm not going to answer emails at ridiculous times of the day. Our company is not saving lives. There's really not as much pressure as people might feel there is. And if I need time to myself, 2 months, one day, whatever, I should be able to take it because at the end of the day, like it's just a job. These things pass. Like when I think about how I let myself suffer in that job, even for just 3 months, like 3 months was way too long. And I wouldn't do it again. I have the red flags memorized now.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you during that interview process because they recruited you. They're
Yeah.
hiring you as a senior resource, but not trusting anything that you say. I see
Yeah.
that across many companies. A lot of my friends are getting recruited and then not trusted by anything they want to decide. And it's like, what's the point of
Yeah.
hiring me? You're paying me really well. Like, don't micromanage me. Like, it's a waste of money. And
Yeah.
but looking back in the interview process, were there red flags that you kind of turned a blind eye to?
I was really impressed during the interview process. I felt a lot of opinions that they had about work were very similar to me. Like they really liked how candid I was and that I would like, I told them if I see something that I think is not going to work or that I don't like, I'm going to tell you. I'm not just going to
You told
agree
them.
with you. And I told them, I was like, I'm not just going to agree with you because you're the founder. And it's part of the reason why I left my job before. I felt like things were going in the wrong direction. I just didn't like feeling frustrated at work and I wanted to make an impact that I felt proud of. When I think about the interview process, I feel like I was like overtly honest about some things that some recruiters might not like. And I felt like I would really fit into that environment. But it turns out it's okay when they're blunt and they're critical. But if I'm that way, like it's not okay if I do it. They wanted to be this like ideal of a workplace. But in practice, it was, I mean, I hear the story so many times where someone is working too close to the founder and it just ruins their work experience because at the end of the day, this company is that person's baby. They're so close to it and they have a hard time like letting go of the different pieces so that the person they hired to do the job can actually do their job. And I get it to a point where if you've made this like personal investment, you've been spending like years and years on this, but think about the things that you could be doing with your time if you like
Mhm.
use the person that you hired. And so, I mean, you'll hear this from anyone who has like some space and time from when they get fired, like blessing in disguise. I found a way better spot after. And I think that's the thing. Like it comes back to that like energy thing. Like when that was like a negative space and it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And then I had some time after that job. I got to travel and I started feeling a bit better about my skills through freelancing and things like that.
So you're
Totally
finding
like
proof again.
weighing in the direction. Yeah, there's like proof points. Exactly. Exactly. And so I could feel more confident. And then things started kind of going on the upswing.
Yeah. The last thing that I want to mention is you said you feel lighter right now. What does the lighter feel like? Is it sleeping better? Is it being able to log off like at the end of the day? Like what does that feel like in practice?
I mean, part of it is like that bit about being more vulnerable with the people around me. Like, I don't think I realized how much I was holding in and keeping to myself. And so now I can kind of like just share more with the people around me. And if something's going on with me, I can take care of it faster. And I feel like I'm more myself. I feel like the people around me get me. I'm not like constantly explaining myself to someone else and I don't have to defend myself often. The part that's lighter, it feels like it's opened up like extra capacity that I never knew I had. One of the things like while I was taking the 2 months off, the first month was hard. It was very sad. I was just upset. A lot of the time I watched a lot of TV. The second month, I realized like I need to do something that like feeds my soul and makes me feel good. And I realized like I don't do a lot of things that I used to. I really enjoyed beading. I really enjoyed cooking, baking, all of these like creative outlets that when I'm like really caught up in work and I don't know, social drama, whatever, those things like just fall away. And so I started being more intentional about doing those things. And I was like, you actually can have a full-time job, a boyfriend, friends, family, and hobbies. That's possible. You just have to
That's
have
all we're striving for, right? But it is
yeah,
possible.
exactly. You just have to feel better about yourself and know what's important to you in that moment. Even sometimes I love hanging out with my best friend, but if I feel like I need to do something for myself that day and we have plans, like I have no problem telling them like, hey, can we get coffee another time because I'm not having a good day? I'll tell you about it later, but like I need to just be in my apartment, my beautiful apartment all by myself and and deal with it. And so I don't know. I do feel more in control now. I think it is a big part of it as well. But yeah, it does just feel like lighter, and I feel like I'm getting like more out of the things that I'm putting energy into, the people I'm spending time with. Like all of these things add to my life rather than take away.
That's a good way of putting it. With everything we've talked about today, we've talked about burnout, mental health, therapy, supportive and non supportive workplaces, relationships, friendship breakups, self care, and actual self care. With all that being said, what is your last piece of advice for anyone listening?
You just have to remember that you can change and be open to learning more about yourself, learning more about how to take care of yourself, and knowing that those things might evolve over time. I feel like so different than I was a few months ago. The way that I look at problems, the way that I engage with friends, family, how I approach work, like all of these things feel very, very different. I feel a lot calmer, and which was my goal. I just wanted to be calm. And I think just like knowing that you're capable of changing those things and having the control, it's just, it really does depend on you. Like you have to do those things. You have to have those conversations. You have to make those relationships. But it's once you get that momentum, it just keeps on going.
Brittany, this was fantastic. I think I'm amazed by how vulnerable you've been in this conversation, and you really did not hold back at all. So, thank you so much for your time. I know everything that you've said is going to hit a nerve with someone, but also resonate and bring comfort to a lot of people. So, thank you so much.
Oh my God, thank you for having me.